Let's turn back to a point Jake brought up, the states, because governors out there, they're taking dramatic action. This week, California Governor Gavin Newsom announced extraordinary measures one day after he wrote a letter to the president estimating that more than half of the state, 25.5 million people, could test positive for the virus.
A state as large as ours, a nation state, is many parts, but at the end of the day, we're one body. That we direct a statewide order for people to stay at home.
On Friday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo ordered all employers to keep workers at home and ban gatherings of any size.
On the businesses, on the valve, we reduced it to 50% of the workforce. We then reduced it to 75% of the workforce must stay home. And today we're bringing it to 100% of the workforce must stay home.
Yamiche, when you're at the White House talking to your sources there, where do they see the pressure points from these governors? What do these governors need in the coming weeks to survive?
Well, the president held this kind of live press conference where he was taking calls from governors all around the country this week. He talked to a governor from South Carolina, from Michigan, from Illinois, and what governors were saying in call after call is that we need information on the stimulus package. We need to know how our hospitals are going to be able to get the equipment that they need. We also might need some help from the National Guard to try to help move things around our state. So what governors are saying is that they need actual specific resources. The other thing that governors were saying today and saying this whole week was that they need guidance from the White House. So the White House put out these kind of recommended things that they wanted people to do, including don't go in a group of larger than 10 people. But you've seen governors take extra steps to say, you know what, we're closing down all our bars and restaurants. This is not a recommendation, as the governor of New York said today when he was talking about that idea that some people need to stay home. He said this is not a recommendation. This is a mandate. We will lawfully enforce that. That's not what the White House is doing. They're doing guidance, but they're not giving mandates. And I'm told, at least by some sources, that's a Republican principle in their minds. They want to make sure that they are in coordination with states, but they don't want to be seen as the federal government directing states to do things.
Eamon, when you're covering companies, what matters in your reporting about how they're helping states trying to produce new ventilators, new masks?
You know, look, you are seeing some companies responding to this, and there's some interesting, companies that are in a weird way benefiting from this. You see companies like Walmart, which are out there hiring workers right now because of the enormous logistical capacity that they have. And a lot of companies are looking into this idea of can they start to produce these ventilators, which look like they're going to be in extreme shortage as soon as next week. None of that turns on a dime, and it depends on financial incentives. The president does have the Defense Production Act where he can really task companies with specific orders. We haven't seen that happen just yet, but a lot of companies are looking into it. The problem is, that this crisis is going to happen next week, and companies are going to need some time to ramp all this up, Bob.
Jake, should we expect states to get financial support as part of these ongoing talks at the Capitol, or should they not expect that?
They should expect it at some point. States and municipalities are going to be hit hard, and the real issue right now, frankly, that they're wrestling on is hospitals and filling the gaps at hospitals. But honestly, in the next couple months, as we just discussed before, there's just going to be so many of these spending bills that they're going to have to backfill some of these state, local, and municipal budgets, or else they're going to be in big trouble, because they are, although they're not carrying the brunt of the financial burden, they're carrying a huge load of it, and from everything from logistical issues to social services. They're going to need backup, and Congress realizes that. And remember, it's an election year, and I hate to be so crass, but election years matter, and people want to be in the good graces of the public during an election year.
Nancy, when you look at Governor Cuomo, he's giving daily press briefings that are televised nationally. Are we seeing new players emerge, not only in the Republican Party and on the stage with President Trump, the federal officials, but within the Democratic Party?
Absolutely. I mean, the Andrew Cuomo briefings have kind of become must-see TVs, very matter of fact, sometimes somewhat humorous. He doesn't overhype the problem, but he doesn't undersell it either. And so I've talked to a lot of people in states far from New York City who are watching for that very reason. Getting back to the issue that states are going to be facing here, Bob, is the fact that unemployment benefits go out from the states, out from state pockets. And we've seen unemployment claims rise by 1,000% over the past week alone. So we know that that is going to be a big issue for the states, and that's one of the things that senators are wrangling over right now is how do you create a mechanism to get additional money to the states so that they can boost their unemployment benefits, and how big should those unemployment benefits be?
Is the president, Yamiche, giving the governors leeway to decide how to use the National Guard or shelter-in-place orders in their state? Is he stepping back at times from having sweeping declarations?
It seems that way, and it seems as though, again, the White House is falling on this idea and using this idea that Republicans in particular believe that the federal government shouldn't be telling states what to do. That's what the line is when you ask White House officials about it. But when you talk to some, especially Democratic local governments, they say they want more from the federal government. They say they want actual leadership. They say that there's a leadership vacuum around President Trump, that he's not telling them exactly what the best thing is to do, especially when it comes to bars and restaurants. The White House was kind of late on the idea of telling people what to do with bars and restaurants. We saw so many cities and states start to tell people, look, you can't crowd in bars. If you want something, you can get it delivered, or you can have takeout, but don't stand at those bars. As we saw in some spring break cities like Miami, where I'm from, there were a lot of people on the beaches and crowding, and those images caused local officials to react before the White House. The other thing I think I should just point out is that these are the times where people, like you were saying, look for leaders that are compassionate, that break through, that make people feel as though they can be calm, that have a message for Americans that are so scared. And unfortunately, we've seen President Trump really stumble on the idea of being a calmer in chief. Instead, he's lashed out at the media. Instead, he's said some misleading information. And then there are times where he has been very serious in his tone and where he said, look, this is going to get very, very bad. Americans need to be vigilant.